Good morning. How we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka Split Suit. Welcome back to another video. Joined as always by Chris Warren. And Chris, I want to talk about a fun hand posted in the Red Chip Poker Discord. You want to go through it with me?
Let's do it.
All right. So in this one, we're playing 1-3 live, have 6-4 suited in the small blind. And in typical live poker fashion, there are an absolute slew of limpers, and Hero just decides to complete from the small. I would do the exact same thing here. Would you raise here ever? I'm assuming you never fold, right? The pot odds are just too darn good to ever even consider that, right?
Yeah, never folding. Yeah, I'd certainly consider raising sometimes here, but it's very dependent on, do I have a nice tight image, and can I just, get a reasonable shot at stealing the pot pre-flop with an appropriate size raise. If that's not the case, then there's no way I'm raising.
Yep, just call complete and play it out from here. Big blind decides to check, end up going very, very multi-way to the flop, and flop top two with a backdoor flush draw, and Hero decides to check. So let's take a moment and kind of talk about this flop spot. You want to lead it off and we'll kind of go from there? What are you thinking about in this spot?
Yeah, so we have an interesting situation where I think checking and betting kind of look pretty equally appealing here, right? So if we expect our opponents to bet a lot of medium strength hands, where maybe a 4-5, an ace-6, anything where it's like we expect our opponents to kind of lean on the more aggressive side of the betting, to me that makes checking real appealing, right? Because leading out into a bunch of people, like you're not going to bet too large. I would think maybe 50%. You're going to get lots of loose calls and not go into the turn with a huge advantage with this type of two pair. And if they're willing to bet aggressively, that's great. However, if you were to check and they were going to check back a lot and people are just going to check their medium strength hands, then betting is a lot more appealing. So you're charging them an appropriate price when we likely have a pretty big advantage.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And this is really one of those where you want to know your table at least a little bit, right? Do they play more passive and sticky, or do they play more aggressive and betty? And realistically, when you're in this spot, you should kind of know which way this table leans and then make your decision from there. In this situation, let's just run it through as played. So Hero decides to check. Big blind fires for 15, gets one call, two calls, three calls, and here we are. So let's just look at what Hero does. Hero decides to go for the check raise, goes for kind of a smaller check raise up to 45 total, so 3 times the bet. I'm not personally in love with this check raise size. I'd probably go on the larger side of things with the thought process that this is a 1-3 live game, and if someone has something they're going to continue with, be it top pair, be it pair plus draw, be it an overpair like pocket eights, that they're probably going to continue for more than just 45. That's my personal opinion here. I don't know. How are you feeling about the size? You like it? Would you go bigger? Would you not check raise here and just check call? What's the thought process?
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. So we're dealing with a pretty large size bet. I think the pot at this point before rake would be 18 or something close to that. So, so this is pretty close to a pot size bet if you would take into account rake. And, it's coming from the person directly to our right. So that's pretty strong. Someone just betting a pot size bet into the field without having other people having reacted to it. It's coming from the big blind, who probably has the nut advantage in this scenario, where they can have 5-2, where pretty much no one else I think would have 5-2 offsuit, for example. So maybe not even 5-2 suited. So with that in mind, I think in this specific situation, because it's the big blind betting, I would be leaning towards call with the pot size bet and all that. I think the small raise size does make some sense when you're worried about a very strong range, but you also probably could still get value from raising. So I think there's like some logic to there. But I also agree, if you think raising is good, you could raise bigger here, and anything with like a 5 is just getting auto priced in at this point against our specific hand, which is not good. So all that taken into account, I think in this specific situation, with the strength of the big blind bet being a pot size bet, I would lean towards call. But I don't think that a small raise is terrible, but I think I agree with you. It's like probably should be bigger.
So I guess my thought process is this. If I go larger, and I'm not saying like super large, let's just say we go to like 60 instead of 45. Again, I'm not talking about like potting it up to like 120 or so. I'm talking about just a little bit larger than this.
Yeah.
If we go a little bit larger, I think we're getting a lot of value from EP1, EP3, and MP2. But if the big blind comes over the top, I think they've pretty much told us, like, hey, they have us absolutely crushed out. So there is almost like automatic value from the three people that we almost certainly crush a very, very large chunk of the time. Just because I think if EP1, EP3, or MP2 had a big hand here, probably getting raised a decent chunk of the time, especially from like EP3, MP2.
Yeah.
So if the big blind calls the bigger check raise, cool, feeling very comfortable. If they come over the top, it's like, okay, cool, we ran into 52 or 75 or something like that. We're just going to have to probably roll up. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of value from the other three players. The big blind will just kind of be face up whether or not he three bets or calls. That's my personal thought. Like that or dislike that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Actually, we're pretty concerned about a big blind. Even if they continue, it's a little concerning.
Sure.
Just because of the. I mean, we're dealing with 32 combos, the full 32 combos of 75, 52. I've never said it like that before. 5-2 and 7-5. So that's not great. Like if they call our larger, even a slightly larger raise size, it's like, do we? I think we'd be checking the most turns actually. And
call.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty clear call. Looking at this as just, you shouldn't be raising the person with pure nut advantage, in my opinion, right? That's just sort of a balancing technique we can use. So even though raising does look really good with all the money trapped in, and I'm not saying it's bad. Yeah, I think your logic makes sense. If we're like reading big blind as like, okay, they're wide enough here that raising's okay. Yeah, our main targets are going to be the middle players anyway. So I think your logic holds true on that. But yeah, I'm very cally. I'm very on board with just calling here and as played.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense also because you're looking at the size and you're like, well, this is nearly a pot size bet, which I understand because you're thinking about, okay, what does this pot look like with rake taken out? So yeah, it's probably closer to 18 or 19 bucks and 15 gets a little bit bigger. But I'm also assuming, honestly, a lot of live players from the big blind here, if they're sitting here with worst two pair, if they're sitting here with even a single pair or a pair plus draw in any capacity, like they're probably going to be betting too much in this spot. Not really sure what to do with a wide number of hands, which if you're thinking in the inverse, bigger size, maybe they don't bet quite as often with some of those more marginal hands. So maybe a larger density of their betting range becomes the 75 or the 52. And yes, I played a lot of like Omaha back in the day, so for whatever reason, my brain thinks in that term way too often. Yeah, if you're thinking there's a larger density of those hands, I think that kind of sucks and pushes this a little bit more towards a call or maybe a smaller check raise. But yeah, against I think the average 1-3 opponent, I don't know. I'm good with this personally, but
yeah, I think there's a lot of value in raising, right? It's just it's not even whether we think the big blind really has density there. It's just they should have pure combos in this. It's one of those unique situations, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think because of just them having pure combos, there's like they can't actually make that large mistakes there. So we should be very cautious, I think, if big blind continues at all at this point.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Well, as played, they do end up continuing after our check raise. They do end up going for not quite a min 3-bet, but pretty darn close to it. Mm-hmm. Everyone else gets out of the way at this point, and Hero decides to mash it in for all of it. So let's just kind of back up one tick when Hero is facing this 3-bet. I don't know, this sucks. Like, I know we have top two, and I know folding top two sucks, and we're getting an amazing price just given the size of the 3-bet, but I don't know. This just looks like we are in absolute hell. It doesn't look anywhere near bluffy enough in terms of like the size. This just looks like we're stepping into it. So I don't know. You kind of thinking the same thing, or what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I was worried if big blind called. So I'm pretty concerned when they come over the top with a 3-bet and a min 3-bet at that. It's very, very strong. I'm basically at this point thinking like, okay, do I have like odds to call them and hope things get past, like it checks down after that. And even that's a little iffy. Like maybe it was like literally a min raise here. So we're going up to like 75 or something. We'd consider that. It's kind of just looking like a fold at this point because it's, again, they just have that extreme nut advantage. And, if we were making this raise, it really was exploitatively to target the players in the middle, not the big blind, because no matter how good the big blind is, they can just have they have the nuts in the range and they have a high density of it. So we'd have to really work to come up with enough combos of villain playing, hands in a sort of atypical way that aren't straights. So with that in mind, it's like, I just see a pretty easy fold. We're getting massive reverse implied odds on our entire stack, essentially.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement here. And this is, again, I hate to keep hammering on like the 1-3 thing, but it's just the smaller live game in a room tends to play a little bit more passive. So when you see people putting in the 3-bet, especially if they don't typically play that level of aggressive, I think it's just leaning way, way, way too much towards you are in absolute hell. And not clear if it's a straight, not clear if it's a set, but it doesn't really matter. All of them crush us, and unless they're going to have like exactly 43 or 63, I don't know. I think you're just in a really, really rough spot here, and getting rid of it, I hate making that suggestion. I hate folding in general. I hate folding big hands even more, but I think this is one of those where mash is like the worst of the options, and probably hate life and fold instead of stack it off and get snap called by a big blind.
Yeah, this is one of those kind of unique situations where it's like, pretty much you would very rarely ever find situations where you can fold top 2 pair on the flop. But this is just one of those situations we need to look at our range and nut advantage. And I think it kind of demonstrates why it's so important is that if someone has such a high density of nuts in their range, I mean, it's 32 combos of straights and then 5 combos of sets. So they have 37 combos that just crush us. And we'd be, it's like, would they play 4-3 like this? It's kind of, I think we would typically discount this. So we'd say, okay, maybe they have 4-3, but like they probably only do this line 15% of the time or 20% of the time. It's not a good line with 4-3. And a cautious live player would have to not. And then again, how many combos of 4-3 do they have? Like it's like 9. Or and it's actually less. It's 6 because we have a blocker.
3, 6.
So we're dealing with 6 combos that are maybe in there that we beat. The math just gets real weird. And how many bluffs does a 1-3 player have here? And it's kind of one of those interesting spots where I think GTO and exploitative kind of line up. Where it's like, we probably shouldn't have been messing with someone with such a strong nut advantage. And it's just that I think that's demonstrated by us having to make a weird fold here. Still okay. And I think, there's definitely reads of big blind where it's just like they're going to go nuts. Like if they have pocket 5s and if they have any 5, they're just going to be like apt to make a crazy big bet bluff here. Yeah, we could start leaning towards continuing. But barring a really nutty read, I think it's just a pretty weird fold, but an important one.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with all that. And just to echo the point of the 3-bet size, right? I mean, that size just does not scream, I have a naked 5 or pocket 5s or anything like that. It's just, again, you'd have to have some reads or information on that. And I just don't see the average, live player in general, honestly, choosing that kind of sizing with that kind of hand personally.
I've seen it. Yeah. I've definitely seen, but it's really the people that's like, if you had been playing at the table, you would know.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not your run-of-the-mill lag. You're going to run into a 3 even trying something like this.
Yeah, 100% agreed. So as played, 4 on the river, hero ends up getting bailed out, which is always nice against that straight. Hero ends up shipping the pot, and this is one of those I'm actually really proud of Hero for posting this because I think it's really easy to get yourself in that flop spot, put it in really, really bad, end up winning the pot, and then never think about the hand again. Whereas this is one of those, it's definitely worth exploring, whether you suck out and win it, or even just run against the absolute bottom of the range or something, or lose this hand. It's always worth reviewing it. Pretty much all of your big hands you should always review, see if they're coolers or not coolers, see how you played. If you're not sure, post it in the Discord, redchippoker.com/Discord to post your own hands and ask questions. Yeah, I think we kind of hammered this one pretty darn well. Kind of one of those wrong play, right result. But yeah, in the long run, hopefully Hero does not make this exact same mistake again. Chris, any last minute thoughts on this one?
No, but the Discord is absolutely bumping. So if you have hands like this that you want to check out, it's a perfect plot to do it. So
Yes, it is. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for hanging out today. Greenlight King, thank you for posting this in the Discord. And if you have any comments or questions on this hand, do not hesitate to leave a comment or, of course, jump in the Discord today. Otherwise, we'll see you back shortly with a brand new video. And in the meantime, good luck out there and happy grinding.